Good evening. This is Mottek on Money. We're doing it live right here, weeknights in the 5 o'clock hour in Los Angeles. Mottek on Money 5 nights a week for you here on 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com, and the on-demand Mottek on Money podcast for you at kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, all your favorite podcast platforms, and on the socials too at Frank Mottek on X, formerly known as Twitter and Insta. Big night tonight, right after Mottek on Money tonight. Stay tuned to 790 KBC for the first Republican primary presidential debate live from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 9 presidential primary candidates will be taking the stage. The Republican frontrunner, former President Trump, will not be participating in this first debate. Meanwhile, legal drama playing out this political season, with President Trump and 18 other associates charged today in Georgia as part of a sweeping indictment alleging they schemed to illegally overturn the 2020 election loss of the president and stop the peaceful transition of power. As you heard at the top of the hour news, a mugshot of former New York mayor and former attorney for President Trump, Rudy Giuliani, was released today after he turned himself in an Atlanta jail on charges connected to alleged efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election in Georgia. Tomorrow, President Trump's Georgia arraignment is now expected to be televised. I'll discuss the legal issues and set the stage for the debate tonight with our terrific 790 KBC legal analyst Royal Oakes, who will be joining me live later this hour. Also, after the debate is over tonight at about 7:30, I'll be taking your calls on what happens tonight. Who do you think won the debate? Who made the best points? And was it smart for President Trump, the Republican frontrunner by far at this point, to sit this debate out? The disastrous Hawaii wildfires likely to come up in the discussion tonight. Also focusing a spotlight on whether Congress will approve additional disaster relief funding in the face of yet another fiscal cliff coming up. Lawmakers appear to be open to the possibility. The White House last week issued a request for what it described as 3 sets of critical needs for emergency funding as part of a possible stopgap funding package to avoid another government shutdown after September 30th. White House asking for $24 billion to help Ukraine, $4 billion for border security measures and to prevent fentanyl from coming across the border, in addition to $12 billion for FEMA's disaster relief fund. I'll discuss that and more tonight with Mark JOFFE, policy analyst at the Cato Institute, coming up later this hour. On the markets, we see stocks finishing higher today, with the S&P 500 seeing its best day since June 30th. Bond yields easing a bit from recent highs. Traders awaiting results from NVIDIA, the chip maker at the forefront of the AI software boom. And looks like AI shares up about 200% so far this year. Demand for NVIDIA's AI equipment is so high, the company is reportedly running up against limited supplies. And NVIDIA getting a bump here. The Dow coming in for a closing gain of 184 points. The S&P 500 of 48. And the NASDAQ composite advanced 215 points. Let's talk about some of the other market movers today. United Parcel Service shares moving higher by about 1% after workers at the deliveries and logistics company voted for a new contract. AMC Entertainment down nearly 13%, one of the meme stocks. This follows an 18% drop on Tuesday. A reverse stock split is planned to be followed by the conversion of 8 preferred shares. Peloton Interactive shares down about 23% after the exercise vendor came up short with its revenue outlook for the latest quarter, while disclosing that a bike recall has had a greater than expected impact on the business. Abercrombie & Fitch A&F shares up 23%, soaring today after the teen clothing retailer blew past analyst estimates for the second quarter and raised guidance. Foot Locker moving down by about 28% after the sporting goods retailer swung to a loss in the second quarter. Company lowered its full-year guidance and said it's suspending its quarterly dividend to conserve cash. Nike shares ending down nearly 3%, down 10 straight sessions, and it's seeing its longest losing streak on record. Nike down nearly 3% today, and down 10 straight sessions in a row. Well, tech shares leading the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ sharply higher today. Investors awaiting NVIDIA's earnings report, which came out after the closing bell, and looks like NVIDIA blowing past analyst expectations here. Let's take a closer look now at what happened with NVIDIA today as the Of course, AI craze continues. Let's bring up the latest here on NVIDIA. We see that the stock has soared to record highs today now as investors took in that earnings report. NVIDIA reported second quarter earnings after the bell that blew away already sky-high expectations for the chip giant as the AI hype train continues pushing markets forward. The company reported revenue of $13.5 billion, a 101% jump from last year, and adjusted earnings came in at $2.70 a share, up 429% from last year. Analysts had expected revenue to come in at $11 billion, with earnings per share totaling $2.07. NVIDIA also issued current quarter revenue guidance of $16 billion, plus or minus 2%, far outpacing Wall Street's already lofty expectations for $12.5 billion in revenue. Shares of the graphics chipmaker rising as much as 9% in after-hours trading to a record high price of $515 per share. NVIDIA's report seen as a key test for the ongoing AI hype cycle, according to Yahoo News, which, of course, has pushed companies of all stripes to dive into the technology of AI in hopes of cashing in, but none has seen the actual fortunes of their business change to an extent already being enjoyed by NVIDIA. We did hear from NVIDIA's CEO today. In a statement, he said a new computing era has begun. Companies worldwide are transitioning from general purpose to accelerated computing and generative AI. Investors already expecting NVIDIA to deliver a blowout quarter after the company said revenue in its latest would be about $11 billion plus or minus 2%. The CEO added during the quarter, major cloud service providers announced massive NVIDIA H100 AI infrastructures, leading enterprise IT system and software providers announcing partnerships to bring NVIDIA AI to every industry. The race is on to adopt generative AI across the board. We did see a software giant Snowflake reporting earnings after the bell today. The topped analysts' expectations, which combined with NVIDIA's upbeat news today, sent all the AI-related stocks higher in after-hours trading. We did see C3 AI, Palantir, Marvel Technology, and MongoDB all jumping more than 3% in after hours. We see C3 AI and MongoDB have been down roughly 10% over the past month prior to the reports out today, and Snowflake stock rose more than 3% in after hours trading. As Yahoo Finance notes, the rapid increase in demand for NVIDIA's chips led to some on Wall Street to question whether its key supplier TSMC could produce as many graphics processors as NVIDIA's customers needed. In July, for example, Tesla CEO Elon Musk said the company would take NVIDIA hardware as far as NVIDIA will deliver it to us. The AI craze, of course, as you may recall, kicked into high gear in November of 2022 when OpenAI debuted its generative AI app ChatGPT. And, of course, things really took off early this year. Artificial intelligence has been around for some time. ChatGPT's popularity as one of the fastest-growing apps in history put the technology firmly on Wall Street's radar, and we saw that big rally as a result. Since then, the tech companies, including Microsoft and Google and Meta, have debuted or announced they're working on their own generative AI tools and software. This is Mottek on Money here on 790 KBC. It's going to be a big night tonight for us with the first Republican primary presidential debate. That'll be coming up right after Mottek on Money at 6 o'clock tonight. I'll preview what's happening this evening with our legal analyst, Royal Oakes. He'll be joining me live later this hour. And, of course, we're also watching the recovery efforts continuing in Hawaii and new concerns about the bill for all of that. We'll be talking about that with one of the top people at the Cato Institute and this new fiscal cliff, which is being discussed in Washington already in the face of the astronomical bill for the relief efforts in Hawaii, along with the president's request for another $24 billion to help Ukraine in its war with Russia and another $4 billion for border security measures and to deal with the fentanyl crisis along the U.S.-Mexico border. Lawmakers appear open to possibility of passing additional disaster relief, but any path to approval complicated by the ongoing government funding battles, with the White House recently issuing a request for what it described as 3 sets of critical needs for emergency funding. This is a big story as a possible stopgap funding package to avoid a government shutdown that'll be coming up possibly after September 30th. Setting the stage for a big night tonight in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That's where the spotlight will be hitting. The 9 presidential primary candidates will be taking the stage. Not all of them. Larry Elder, who previously staged a failed run for California governor and a recall election against Governor Newsom, said he met all the requirements set by the Republican National Committee to participate in tonight's debate in Milwaukee. yet it informed him he was not eligible to participate. He said the committee only informed him after sending in his qualification package for the debate that polls from a specific polling company he used were not valid. Looks like a lawsuit has been filed on behalf of Larry Elder regarding the situation there. Might be a bit of a cliffhanger as to whether he ultimately does participate. Another presidential candidate, Perry Johnson, is also suing the Republican National Committee for now not allowing him to be on stage tonight in the primary debate. Johnson's a businessman from Michigan, claimed to have met every requirement for the debate, yet the RNC rejected him. And in a statement obtained today, he said the RNC has had preconceived ideas about who they wanted on stage. So legal drama playing out there involving Larry Elder as well as another candidate, Perry Johnson, who wanted to be on stage tonight in Milwaukee. The other big thing that's going to be happening on Friday, investors looking ahead to Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell's speech at the Kansas City Fed's annual symposium in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. U.S. banks analysts said he expects Fed Chairman Powell to speak in general terms on a Friday, with investors eager to hear any nuances around what policymakers are watching for clues to the path of inflation or the Fed chair's assessment of how a strengthening dollar or rising real yields are affecting financial conditions. We did get a new reading on real estate today. New home sales up 4.4% to an annual rate of 714,000 in the month of July from a revised 684,000 in the previous month. That reading we got today from the Commerce Department. Meanwhile, a preliminary benchmark revision by the Labor Department signaled that workers on payrolls would be reduced by 306,000 as of March. That also provided support for stocks today, indicating the job market has not been running quite as hot as previously thought. That is a pretty significant development. We also got the PMI reading for August. Purchasing Managers Index coming in at 47, down from a July reading of 49. And the yield on the 10-year note was down to 13 basis points to 4.19% today from 4.33% the previous session, extending the Europe-inspired decline after the Purchasing Managers Index readings came in weaker than expected. Stocks did get a boost after those bond yields in Europe, as well as here on this side of the pond, moved lower on the latest report showing that Eurozone economic activity contracted more than expected to a 33-month low. Earlier this week, a sharp rise in Treasury yields with the 10-year note hitting a 16-year high on Monday had been blamed for a broad tech-led stock market pullback. As we've been talking with our market analysts this week, stocks competing for those high interest rates. Don't have to take market risk when you got the yield in the 10-year note at the levels where they are currently. That was the discussion we've had already this week. But it looks like they are easing once again, also taking along the mortgage rates higher, along with those bond yields. The benchmark bond yields affect the fixed-rate mortgage rates as well, and they've hit 20-year highs in the last week or so. Folks, are you looking for legal help you can trust? Look no further than attorney Clark Fielding and the Fielding Law Team, your go-to destination for top-notch personal injury legal representation. Fielding Law understands that life can take unexpected turns, and you need a strong legal team to stand by your side. If you've been hurt in an accident that was not your fault and need help with a personal injury claim to obtain justice, Fielding Law is here to fight for you. Accidents happen, but you don't have to face the aftermath alone. Fielding Law's experienced attorneys are here to guide you through the legal process and ensure you get the compensation you deserve. Medical bills piling up, lost wages due to injury? Don't worry. Fielding Law specializes in personal injury cases and works tirelessly to recover your losses so you can focus on healing.
It's time for kickoff, and the Believe podcast will get you ready for the new season.
How do you live through this as a Detroit sports fan?
Believe has podcasts covering all 32 professional teams and many of your favorite college teams, too.
You solidified your defense. You got better.
Sideline to sideline, end zone to end zone.
If you don't do those things, then you're not even trying your hardest to win at football, and I don't know what we're doing.
There was a lot of great players on those teams that I was fortunate to be part of.
Search BLEAV podcasts wherever you listen.
Fielding Law Team has a proven record of success. They've helped countless clients secure fair settlements and win in court. You can trust Fielding Law to provide you with the best legal representation possible. If Fielding Law takes your case, Clark and his team of sharks will personally work with you, fighting hard for you to receive all the compensation the law allows. Call Fielding Law for a free case evaluation. It costs you nothing to get the honest opinion. And do what I did, put Clark Fielding's number in your phone under the word accident. So you hit the number when you need them, 833-88-SHARK. Again, 833-88-SHARK or go to clarkthesharklaw.com. Continues here in 790 KABC, a winning day for the markets with the Dow coming in for a closing gain of 184 points, settling at 34,473. The S&P 500 gained 48 to finish at 4,436, and the NASDAQ advanced 215 points, settling at 13,721. It was the NASDAQ's biggest one-day point and percentage gain since July 28th. The tech stocks did lead the charge today, and NVIDIA knocking out of the park after hours. NVIDIA stocks soaring on record earnings on the AI boom, and NVIDIA shares hitting record highs in after-hours trading. Record high earnings and the earnings forecast crushing expectations. Let's see if we can bring up the latest here on NVIDIA after hours. At the close, up about $15 at $471 and change after hours, up another 6.5% at more than $30 to $502.15. NVIDIA hitting record highs after hours. Company reported revenue of $13.5 billion. That was a 101% jump from last year. Looks like the other AI names, as I mentioned earlier, also went along for the ride today. A very, very big day for the tech stocks involved in the AI. And we did see bond yields pull back just a bit today with the yield on the 10-year note. Let's bring up the latest here now at 4.19%. That's the one that impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates, which create a lot of nervousness in the real estate and mortgage business, with mortgage rates hitting 20-year highs in the last week or so. Taking a look at what's happening in the cryptos now, we see Bitcoin down about $100 at $26,474. As those bond yields have moved up, we've seen the air come out of the crypto world. Ethereum down about $3 now at $1,681. And Doge has also been pulling back lately. Let's bring that one up at 6 cents here at the moment. Of course, a lot of attention focused on what's happening with those bond yields. And as Reuters notes, a recent spike in the bond yields has come alongside muted expectations for inflation, assigned to some bond fund managers that economic resilience and high bond supply are now playing a larger role than second-guessing the Fed. The 10-year nominal yields hit a 16-year high this week on concerns about Fed Chairman Jerome Powell sending a hawkish message about keeping rates high at the annual Jackson Hole Symposium coming up on Friday. The bond yields, which move inversely to prices, tend to rise in an inflationary environment because inflation erodes the value of a future bond payout. But while higher moves in bond yields in the last several months were often driven by investors pricing in higher interest rates as the Fed sought to tame the rising inflation, expectations on the pace of price rises have moved lower in recent weeks. Investors see evidence that a fresh set of drivers has taken hold, including the Bank of Japan letting yields go higher, which might reduce foreign investors' appetite for treasuries, and an increase in supply of U.S. government bonds, with investors demanding more for holding more debt. And while the timing and size of the central bank's monetary tightening actions have preoccupied bond investors for well over a year now, the market might have reached an inflection point in terms of the primary driver of sentiment, according to analysts at BMO Capital Markets. Annual consumer price growth has slowed down from a peak above 9% in June of 2022 to around 3%, considerably closer to the Fed's 2% target after policymakers delivered a lot of rate hikes starting in March of 2022. Expectations for inflation over the next decade, as measured by the Treasury inflation-protected securities market, the TIPS market, have remained relatively stable in recent months. The 10-year break-even inflation at 2.35% is about 5 basis points higher since the beginning of the year. Long-term Treasury yields account for factors such as inflation, expectations, and term premiums, or what investors demand to be compensated for the risk of holding long-term paper. Yields are also a reflection of expectations around the so-called neutral rate, the level at which interest rates are neither stimulative or restrictive for the economy. A recent string of strong economic reports, despite higher interest rates, has strengthened investors' belief that interest rates will remain higher for longer, even if inflation is tamed. Money markets expect now the Fed to maintain rates in the current 5.25% to 5.5% range until the second quarter next year before starting to ease. But many will be looking for clues about possible additional rate hikes from Fed Chairman's big speech in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, coming up on Friday. This is Mottek on Money. We'll be talking to one of the top people at the Cato Institute about what's happening in Washington as another fiscal cliff nears, and we'll also be setting the stage for the first Republican presidential primary debate coming up after this program tonight at 6 o'clock. We'll be carrying it live for you right here on 790 KABC. I'll discuss that with our legal analyst, Royal Oakes, who's also taking in the big news today involving what happened today in Georgia, and President Trump expected to appear in Georgia for an arraignment tomorrow. We are now told that that's going to be televised, so that's going to be a big event. Mottek on Money continues here in 790 KABC. Big night here tonight, right after Mottek on Money. Stay tuned to 790 KABC for the first Republican primary presidential debate live from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Something that might come up tonight, certainly that disaster in Hawaii following the wildfires there. The disastrous Hawaii wildfires now focusing a spotlight on whether Congress will approve additional disaster money in the face of yet another fiscal cliff. Let's bring in Mark JOFFE now, policy analyst at the Cato Institute, who's following this very, very closely. Mark, thank you very much for taking the call here. And tell us what's under discussion there in Washington and how this is expected to play out.
Well, Frank, thanks very much for having me. And, of course, we all have to say a prayer for all the people who are suffering in Maui right now. It's really a terrible situation. Yes, the administration was limited to just $700, per survivor for initial support, and they will be looking to Congress for additional funding. But I wanted to really focus attention on the state and local response, which really has left a lot to be desired and has really put us in a situation where Congress has no choice but to step in.
Certainly. And tell us what you found in your reporting about what happened there.
Well, we sort of look to government at all levels to provide, key public goods like public safety. And, in this case, there were just a lot of problems with the government's response. They had 80 sirens on the island that were there for all sorts of disasters, not just tsunamis, but wildfires as well. And no one sounded those sirens, leaving people, unaware of what was going on. Not enough water was provided. And then, after the conflagration, you had a situation where police were actually just blocking people from going back to their homes and seeing, if their relatives had made it through, to check on friends, to check on pets, which are very important to people. And so it was really a series of errors on the part of the government that made a terrible situation even worse than it needed to be.
Right, and the comment was made by that head of emergency services there that had the sirens gone off, people would have been confused by it. What about what he said and since has resigned? Yes.
Well, it didn't seem that he got much support for that position. Looking at the state's website, it's clear that, number one, the statewide system, of which, one of the installations is in Maui, is for all types of emergencies, and people are told to listen to the radio once they hear the siren to get further details. So I know that many people are now cell phone dependent, but certainly some people would have an old radio around, and they'd be able to tune their AM dial to hear the follow-up warnings from the local government. And then also, I think people looking at the weather and looking at what else was going on probably would have been able to conclude that this was not necessarily a tsunami threat, and they had to think more carefully before running towards the fire, which does seem a little unexpected.
All the more reason to support stations like this, an AM radio certainly, which has been under attack. Obviously, a critical, real-time lifeline for people, and there's no substitute for radio, and nothing beats radio for the immediacy in a situation like that, and we've seen that over and over again, having covered many disasters myself. And in fact, over the weekend, we had that unusual storm here on Sunday and an earthquake, too, and they're calling it the hurricane that happened on Sunday along with that storm, and then the earthquake. People were able to quickly get information via the station here. So Shifting gears for a moment, you're based in the Bay Area and on the front line of what's happening there. I don't know if you've seen the latest videos there where business people have been attacked by the homeless and so forth. Can you give us a ground level view of what you're seeing right out your door?
Well, today there was a very large protest in front of City Hall because many people have become concerned by a court ruling that says that the city can't remove homeless camps, following on the Martin versus Boise decision from 2018. So the argument is that there are not enough shelters available, and when there are not enough shelters available, the city does not have the option of clearing homeless camps. And there have been, just as there are in Los Angeles, I know Los Angeles has quite a reputation for issues with homelessness. There have been a lot of incidents where violence has occurred. Mayor Breed, during her comments today, mentioned that they've had instances of people dying in homeless encampments, including babies being neglected and as a result dying. So it's a very unfortunate situation. And here again, you have a situation where you sort of look to the government to deal with a problem like this, and certainly both in San Francisco and Los Angeles, we've spent billions of dollars on the homeless issue, and yet we still have all of the suffering on the streets. So you have to wonder, is the government the ideal provider of some of these key public goods?
Right, and now the latest idea that the city council here in Los Angeles is allowing on the ballot to require hotels to report how many empty rooms they have every day, and then put homeless people in with paying guests. Was something like that tried in San Francisco? Are they doing it there?
Well, we had during the pandemic, a number of hotels were converted into homeless housing, and there are a couple of problems with that, and I think these problems would really be exacerbated by that idea of having the hotel becoming a shared space between paying guests and homeless residents. So on the one hand, people continue to use substances while in their rooms, and so nobody could check on them because they were ensconced in their room, and so there were cases of overdoses. And then second, you had a lot of instances of people doing a lot of damage to the rooms. So some hotels have been able to sue the city and get large settlements. So, I think that if I, or probably most of your listeners, wanted to, visit a nice hotel in downtown Los Angeles or, somewhere else in the LA area, you really wouldn't want to be dealing with people, overdosing and destroying their rooms while you are trying to sleep.
Right, and voters in Los Angeles will get to decide this issue next year after the city council voted to put that on the ballot. That's the latest idea that's being discussed here. And of course, you've probably seen the latest videos where the smash and grabs. There's been a task force now formed here in the Los Angeles area to deal with these organized retail theft rings. And it looks like you've been dealing with that in San Francisco as well. Any updates on how authorities there are dealing with these smash and grabs?
Oddly, I haven't heard as much of those large invasions of of major retail outlets like Nordstrom up here in the Bay Area. I live in a suburb called Walnut Creek, and we have a Nordstrom, and there was a very bad incident in 2021. And fortunately, I think the perpetrators of that were arrested, and we haven't seen anything similar to that. So yes, it's very frightening. The idea that you might be in a department store and suddenly 50 or 100 people are just running around ransacking the place. It must have been really, really scary for those people.
Certainly, and it's happening again this week at a Macy's as well. And that Nordstrom, was that at the mall that's since closed down now there in the Bay Area?
No, that mall hasn't completely closed. The Nordstrom is closing on August 31st. And oddly enough, half a block away, an IKEA is opening. So I have to admire their courage because they're really moving into a very tough area. It's the mid-market area of San Francisco where a lot of these quality of life issues have been occurring. And they're opening a brand new location, with co-working space, a restaurant, and an IKEA furniture store. So that I don't know if that's a wise decision, but it's certainly a courageous one.
Certainly. And certainly we'll be following that as well here. and all things consumer and retail related, and certainly crime and homeless related. Mark, thank you very much for joining us live here tonight. That is Mark Joffe, policy analyst at the Cato Institute. Live with us here tonight on Mottek on Money on 790 KBC. Mottek on Money continues here in 790 KBC. Big night tonight, right after Mottek on Money tonight. Stay tuned to 790 KBC for the first Republican primary presidential debate live from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 9 presidential primary candidates will be taking the stage tonight. The Republican frontrunner, former President Donald Trump, will not be participating in this first debate. Meanwhile, more legal drama swirling around this political season, with former President Trump and 18 other associates charged today in Georgia as part of a sweeping indictment, alleging they schemed to illegally overturn the 2020 election loss in Georgia and stop the peaceful transition of power. A mugshot of former New York mayor, America's mayor, former attorney for President Trump, Rudy Giuliani, was released today after he turned himself in at an Atlanta jail today on charges connected to that alleged effort to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election in Georgia. And now tomorrow, President Trump's Georgia arraignment is expected to happen and be televised. Joining us live now, 790 KBC legal analyst Royal Oakes will be joining me after the debate as well to talk about this big night. But first, set the stage for us, Royal Oakes. Given this primary debate tonight, President Trump not participating, and all of this legal action swirling around here, give us your assessment of this epic day here today.
Yeah, Frank, of course, the big question is, why did Donald Trump skip this debate? He's going to be doing an interview with Tucker Carlson. But some people are saying it's dangerous for him to not be on the stage. I mean, he's ahead by 40 or more points. I think he's tied or a little ahead of Biden. All of his opponents would, of course, bash him if he had attended. And who knows, he might have a bad night, might not respond well, so you could say, why do it? But some voters may say, well, he's afraid, and the public's entitled to see the combatants duke it out, although Chris Christie, of course, would have the weight advantage. But a lot of people are now wondering, what are these folks going to sound like? Because a lot of these names that, a lot of folks have never heard of, Vivek Ramaswamy and Doug Burgum and so on. I think it's going to be a fascinating show. I got to give credit to John Phillips earlier today on your air with a great line. He said watching the debate might be like watching the Jackson 5 without Michael Jackson. But even without the star attraction, I think it's going to be a fascinating show. And, of course, Larry Elder, as you've reported, will not be there. Larry, I understand, is going to file suit to complain about this. Of course, nobody has a time machine. You can't go back and be on that debate stage tonight. And emergency relief, if he was thinking about rushing in, it's awfully tough to get. I mean, if the wrecking ball is going to knock down the Disney Hall, yeah, sure, you wake up a judge and you get an order. But Larry's case was not really like that. So it'll be fascinating to see the strategies of the candidates in the debate tonight now, Frank. I mean, one approach is don't slam Trump, just boost yourself, attack the others on the stage, figuring either, if you do attack Trump, you're going to offend a huge MAGA base, hurting your chances if Trump is out because of his criminal cases. And also, if really what you're thinking is you're auditioning to be vice president, maybe you don't want to slam Donald Trump. On the other hand, I think a lot of folks, such as Chris Christie, there's no doubt he is going to really weigh in heavily against Donald Trump. And Chris Christie is a superb debater. I mean, he basically eviscerated Marco Rubio back in 2016 when he pointed out Rubio gave the same 25-second memorized speech twice in the same debate. And Christie had a field day with that. And so Chris Christie was looking forward to dueling with Donald Trump, but that's not going to happen tonight.
On the air live with our legal analyst, 790 KBC legal analyst Royal Oakes. And what about this legal drama that's going to be playing out? It's going to be big news tomorrow. And last report I saw, it's going to be televised, too, in Fulton County. President Trump's Georgia arraignment expected to be televised, according to a Fulton County judge. What do you think is going to happen tomorrow?
Wow, isn't it fascinating that they've made that call, Frank, to televise this next step? And, of course, that suggests strongly that they're going to televise the trial as well. Because for a long time, I've been involved in that. I've represented media outlets trying to get cameras rolling way back in the day with the O.J. Simpson trial. And of course, it's been a football, but now it's more of a political football than a legal one, because a lot of folks who really hate Donald Trump are saying, yeah, let the cameras roll, because we want next year to be dominated by this sort of OJ obsession with, oh my gosh, Donald Trump's criminal trial in Miami or New York or wherever. And that means the focus would be on Donald Trump's alleged crimes as opposed to the other issues in the campaign. So, yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see if the state courts agree to televise the trials. Federal courts, of course, uniformly ban televised trials, but some people are calling, Frank, for an exception to the rules. They're saying the U.S. Supreme Court should get involved and say, you know what, we generally don't do this, but this is unique. The American public has a right to see the trials of Donald Trump and his co-defendants. So that drama is going to play out in 2024 as well.
As we await the start of the first Republican primary presidential debate, it'll be interesting to see if the candidates criticize the legal process that's playing out here with all these charges filed against former President Trump. And in the meantime, President Trump's poll numbers are only going higher as the arraignments rank up.
Well, they're just going through the roof, and he's raising funds like crazy. He gets a bump every indictment, and he had that great line before his fourth indictment. He says, I think I just need one more indictment to guarantee my election. But you're right. There's a big strategy question. What are the candidates going to say on the stage tonight about the criminal charges against Donald Trump? On the one hand, they want to be clearly the alternatives to Donald Trump. On the other hand, they got to know that they really can't stress the criminal charges too hard, because Republicans generally are not happy with Joe Biden's Department of Justice and other woke DAs weaponizing the legal system. So it's almost like these allegations are forcing all Republicans into the arms of Donald Trump, even never Trumpers. You hear them criticize and say, what is this, a banana republic? Joe Biden's opponent is going to go to jail for stuff that really, would other people have been charged? You know, and what I always like to say is, really, would the woke DA in New York City have charged Bernie Sanders with paying off a porn star? Probably not, but he was happy to charge Donald Trump. So it's going to be fascinating to see how the 8 candidates on the stage try to maneuver that delicate dance between, on the one hand, saying, you know, I'm better than Donald Trump. On the other hand, they can't embrace what Joe Biden and his Department of Justice is doing to Donald Trump and his co-conspirators. 790
KBC legal analyst Royal Oakes, thank you for setting the stage for the debate that's just about to begin live here tonight on 790 KBC. And Royal, stay with us. We will be joined after the debate, after this. And also, we'll be taking some calls. Yep, you folks in the audience tonight on what happens tonight. Who do you think won the debate? Who made the best points? And was it smart for President Trump, the Republican frontrunner by far at this point, to sit this debate out? We'll be turning to the audience for your reaction as well. This is Mottek on Money on 790 KBC. Stay tuned for the first Republican presidential primary debate. Live coverage right here, 790 KBC.